The water exploded around Ada Okafor as she dove into the infinity pool, her lifeguard instincts overriding every rational thought. The man in the expensive white suit was sinking fast, his body limp and unresponsive. She wrapped her arm around his chest and kicked hard toward the surface, her powerful legs propelling them both upward. When they broke through, gasps and screams erupted from the crowd of wedding guests surrounding the pool. Ada dragged him to the edge with practiced efficiency, her heart hammering as she hoisted his substantial weight onto the polished stone deck. He wasn't breathing. She tilted his head back, checked his airway, and positioned her hands over his chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, she counted in Yoruba under her breath, the language of her childhood surfacing in moments of crisis. Okan, Meji, Meta, Merin. 30 compressions, then she sealed her mouth over his and breathed life into his lungs. Come on, she thought desperately. Come on. His body jerked. Water erupted from his mouth as he coughed violently, his eyes snapping open. They were dark and intense, and they locked onto hers with an expression she couldn't quite read. Confusion, maybe. Or recognition. Angel, he whispered in English, his voice hoarse. Before Ada could respond, a woman in a champagne-colored cocktail dress pushed through the crowd. She was stunning, with perfect features and designer everything, from her Cartier bracelet to her Jimmy Choo heels. The woman dropped to her knees beside the man, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. Minute Jun, oh my God, what happened? The woman's voice trembled, but Ada caught something underneath the worry. Something cold. As paramedics rushed over with a stretcher, Ada stepped back, her wet lifeguard uniform clinging to her skin. She watched the woman, the fiancé, she assumed, fuss over Minute Jun as they loaded him onto the gurney. Just before they wheeled him away, the woman turned and looked directly at Ada. Her lips moved, forming 2 words that only Ada could see, thank you. But the way she said it made Ada's blood run cold. It wasn't gratitude. It was something else entirely. 2 days later, Ada was in her tiny apartment in Itaewon, stirring a pot of jollof rice and trying to forget the strange encounter. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Apparently, someone had filmed the rescue and it had gone viral. #Black Mermaid was trending across Korean social media. Her younger sister Kyoma had already called 3 times from Lagos, alternating between pride and teasing. The knock on her door was unexpected. Ada wiped her hands on a dish towel and checked the peephole. The woman from the pool stood in the hallway, immaculate in a Chanel suit despite the late hour. Ada opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Ada Okafor. It wasn't a question. The woman's smile was practiced and perfect. I'm Jessica Kim. We need to talk. Against her better judgment, Ada let her in. Jessica declined tea and got straight to business, perching on the edge of Ada's worn sofa like she was afraid it might contaminate her designer clothes. I'm going to tell you something that could get us both killed, Jessica said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But first, I need you to understand that everything you think you know about that night is wrong. Ada crossed her arms. I know I saved a man from drowning. That's all I need to know. That man is Kang Minute Jun, heir to the Kang family empire. Jessica pulled out her phone and showed Ada a series of photos, news articles, police reports, surveillance footage. On the surface, they're tech moguls and real estate developers. In reality, they control half the organized crime in Seoul. Drugs through Busan port, human trafficking networks, weapons deals. The Kang family has more blood on their hands than you can imagine. Ada's stomach twisted. And his fiancée is sitting in front of you. Jessica's smile turned sharp. I'm NIS. National Intelligence Service. I've been embedded in the Kang organization for 18 months, and Minute Jun was supposed to die that night. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Ada felt her pulse quicken. You poisoned him. A rare compound that mimics cardiac arrest. Untraceable in standard toxicology screenings. His death would have triggered a power vacuum in the organization, giving us the opening we needed to dismantle the entire operation from within. Jessica leaned forward. But you saved him. And now he thinks you're his guardian angel sent from heaven. That's not my problem. Ada moved toward the door. I did my job. Whatever conspiracy you're running, I want no part of it. He wants to hire you. Jessica's words stopped Ada in her tracks. As his personal bodyguard. He's already spoken to his father about it. The offer is 50 million won per month, with accommodations at the family estate. You'd be one of the few people with unrestricted access to him. Ada turned slowly. And you want me to spy on him? I want you to help me finish what we started. Jessica stood, her heels clicking on the cheap linoleum. Minute Jun isn't like the rest of his family. He's been trying to go legitimate for years, quietly moving money into legal businesses, cutting ties with the worst elements of the organization. But his father and uncle won't let him leave. They'll kill him before they let him destroy what they've built. Then save him. You're NAS. Arrest them all. It's not that simple. We need evidence that will stick, testimony that can't be bought or intimidated. And we need Minute Jun alive and willing to testify. Jessica pulled out a business card and pressed it into Ada's hand. Help me keep him safe while I gather what we need. 3 months. That's all I'm asking. Ada looked at the card, then at Jessica's carefully composed face. Why should I trust you? Because your visa expires in 19 days. Because you have 340,000 won in your bank account, barely enough for rent. Because the men who killed your fiancé in Lagos are still walking free, and deportation means going back to a country that couldn't protect the man you loved. Jessica's eyes softened slightly. I know what it's like to lose someone to this kind of violence. That's why I do this job. Help me, and I'll give you 500 million won, permanent residency, and the chance to actually save someone this time. Not just from drowning, but from a life that's drowning him. Ada's hands trembled. She thought of Tunde, bleeding out on a Lagos street while she pressed her hands uselessly against the wounds. She'd been a nurse then, before everything fell apart. Before she fled to Korea and rebuilt herself as a lifeguard, someone whose only job was to keep people from dying in the water because she couldn't keep them from dying on land. 3 months, Ada said quietly. And if I think you're lying to me, if I think you're using him or me for something worse than what you're claiming, I walk. Deal? Jessica extended her hand. Deal. The Kang estate was like something out of a historical drama, a sprawling complex of traditional Hanok architecture mixed with modern security features that Ada's trained eye caught immediately. Armed guards disguised as gardeners, cameras hidden in decorative eaves, pressure sensors in the stone pathways. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. A severe woman in a housekeeper's uniform led Ada through a series of courtyards to the main house, where Kang Daejung waited in a room that smelled of expensive wood and older money. Minute Jun's father was in his early 60s, distinguished in the way powerful men often are, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Miss Okafor. He didn't rise or offer his hand. My son tells me you saved his life. He also tells me he wants you as his personal security. This is unusual. I understand, sir. Do you? Daejung gestured to a man standing in the corner, built like a tank with the bearing of military special forces. This is Han Sujin, head of our security detail. Former 707th Special Mission Battalion. Show him what you can do. It wasn't a request. Ada followed Sujin to a private training room, where he didn't waste time with pleasantries. He came at her hard and fast, testing her reflexes and training. But Ada had grown up in Lagos, where she'd learned dam boxing from her uncle, and years of swimming had given her core strength that most people underestimated. She used his momentum against him, swept his legs, and had him in a submission hold before he could recover. When they returned to Daejung's office, Sujin was limping slightly and Ada was barely winded. The old man's expression hadn't changed, but something flickered in his eyes that might have been respect. You'll stay in the West Wing. Your duties begin immediately. 50 million won per month, as my son requested. But understand this, Miss Okafor, if anything happens to Minute Jun while you're protecting him, your life becomes worthless. Do we have an understanding? Yes, sir. Good. My son is waiting for you in the garden. Ada found him by a koi pond, dressed casually in dark jeans and a simple black shirt that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Without the panic and chaos of the drowning, she could see him clearly. He was tall, at least 6'3", with the kind of face that would have made him a star if he'd chosen a different life. But it was his eyes that caught her, tired and haunted despite his young age. You came, he said, turning at the sound of her footsteps. You made it hard to say no. He smiled, but it didn't reach those sad eyes. My father can be persuasive. I hope he wasn't too intimidating. I've dealt with worse. I believe that. Minute Jun gestured to a stone bench. Sit with me. I want to talk before this becomes official. They sat, and for a moment neither spoke. The koi moved lazily through the water, oblivious to human complications. Why me? Ada asked finally. You have an entire security team. Why hire a lifeguard? Minute Jun was quiet for a long moment, watching the koi create ripples in the pond. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. When I was drowning, there was a moment of clarity. Everything slowed down. I saw my mother's face. She died when I was 16. Car bomb meant for my father. She was collateral damage in a war she never wanted to be part of. He turned to look at Ada directly. In that moment underwater, I wasn't afraid. I was relieved. And then you pulled me up, and I saw your face, and I thought maybe the universe was giving me another chance. Not to live the life I've been living, but to finally do something that matters. Ada felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't the speech of a hardened criminal. This was a man in a cage, and he knew it. I chose you because you had no reason to save me, Minute Jun continued. You didn't know who I was or what I could offer you. You just saw someone drowning and jumped in without hesitation. That kind of instinct, that kind of courage, it's rare in my world. Everyone around me has an agenda. Everyone wants something. But you just wanted to save a life. And now you're paying me 50 million won a month. Doesn't that give me an agenda? Maybe. But at least it's honest. He stood, extending his hand. Train with me tomorrow morning. 5 a.m. I want to see if you're as good as Sujin claims. Ada took his hand, noting the calluses that spoke of martial arts training. I'll be there. Good. And Ada. He held her hand a moment longer than necessary. Thank you. For saving my life. I know I already said it, but I mean it. That night, in her new quarters, a suite larger than her entire apartment had been. Ada couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation with Minute Jun, trying to reconcile the man by the koi pond with the heir to a criminal empire. Jessica had said he wanted out, and Ada believed it. But wanting out and getting out were two very different things. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. How was day one? Ada typed back. He's not what I expected. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, that's what makes this complicated. Don't get attached. It only makes it harder. Ada didn't respond. She turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she'd really gotten herself into. The next morning came too early. Ada found Minute Jun in a private dojo on the estate, already warming up. He moved through taekwondo forms with precision and grace, his body a weapon honed by years of discipline. When he noticed her, he stopped and bowed slightly. Ready? He asked. Always. They sparred for an hour, and Ada was surprised to find herself enjoying it. Minute Jun was skilled but not arrogant, adapting to her style rather than trying to overpower her. When they finally called a break, both were breathing hard and smiling. You're good, he said, wiping sweat from his face with a towel. Sujin said you used some kind of boxing he'd never seen before. Damn. Nigerian martial art. My uncle taught me when I was 12. Teach me. Now. Why not? I should know how to defend myself the way you do. Besides, I'm tired of only knowing Korean and Japanese fighting styles. Expand my horizons. So Ada taught him the basics of Dam, the traditional boxing style from her homeland. She showed him the wrapped lead hand, the spear hand technique, how to use angular movement and explosive power. Minute Jun picked it up quickly, his body memory from years of martial arts training making him an apt student. Your uncle must have been a good teacher, he said after landing a decent combination. He was the best. He died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Ada didn't mention that the stress of Tunde's murder investigation had probably contributed to it. Some stories were too heavy to share before trust was established. I'm sorry. Minute Jun's expression was genuine. Loss is a language we both speak, I think. Before Ada could respond, the dojo door opened. Jessica entered, immaculate in a pale blue dress, playing the role of doting fiancée perfectly. She smiled at Minute Jun with what looked like genuine affection, then turned to Ada with polite curiosity. I heard we have a new addition to the family. I wanted to introduce myself properly. She extended her hand. Jessica Kim. You saved my fiancé's life. I can never thank you enough. Ada shook her hand, feeling the slight pressure of Jessica's grip, a reminder that they were playing a dangerous game. Just doing my job. Still, we're grateful. Minute Jun has been talking about you non-stop. Jessica moved to Minute Jun's side, wiping sweat from his temple with practiced intimacy. Come to dinner tonight, Ada. I want to get to know the woman who's going to be spending so much time with my future husband. It wasn't a request. Dinner was an elaborate affair in the main dining hall, with Minute Jun's father Daejung at the head of the table and his uncle Kang Sung-ho to his right. Sung-ho was younger than his brother, maybe late 50s, with a warm smile that somehow made Ada more nervous than Daejung's cold stare. Miss Okafor, Sung-ho said in perfect English. My nephew tells me you're from Lagos. Beautiful city. I had business there once, years ago. The energy is incredible. Thank you, sir. Please, call me uncle. Everyone does. He raised his glass of wine. To new family members. May you bring as much light to this house as you've already brought to my nephew's life. Everyone drank, but Ada noticed Jessica's hand tighten almost imperceptibly around her glass. Something passed between her and Sung-ho, a look Ada couldn't quite interpret. Recognition? Warning. The conversation flowed around her, business talk disguised as family chat, political maneuvering dressed up as concern for Minute Jun's well-being. Daejung asked pointed questions about Ada's background, her training, her family. She answered carefully, revealing just enough to seem honest while keeping the painful parts private. Your father was a doctor? Daejung asked. Yes, sir. Cardiovascular surgeon. He died when I was 19. Medical mission in the Delta region. Complications. And your mother? Professor of literature at University of Lagos. She's still there, teaching Akib and Soyinka to students who'd rather be on their phones. That got a small smile from Minute Jun. Sounds like she and my mother would have gotten along. She taught poetry before she married my father. Used to read Yoon Dongju to me before bed. The table went quiet. No one mentioned Minute Jun's mother casually. It was an unspoken rule, apparently. Daejung's expression darkened, and even Sung Cho's perpetual smile faltered. Jessica smoothly changed the subject. Ada, you must miss Nigerian food. I'm sure Korean cuisine is lovely, but there's nothing like home cooking. Maybe you could teach our chef to make something from Lagos? I'd love to try authentic jollof rice. I'd be happy to. After dinner, Minute Jun walked Ada back to her quarters. The night was cool and clear, stars visible despite Seoul's light pollution. I'm sorry about mentioning my mother, he said quietly. It makes everyone uncomfortable. You shouldn't have to apologize for remembering her. In this family, showing emotion is weakness. Sentiment is liability. He stopped walking, turning to face her. That's why I need someone like you around. You remind me that there's a world outside these walls where people can be human. I'm not sure I'm as human as you think. I have my own walls. I know. I can see them. He smiled sadly. But at least you built yours by choice. Mine were constructed by family legacy before I was even born. They reached her door. Minute Jun hesitated, as if wanting to say something more, but instead he just bowed slightly. Good night, Ada. Thank you for being here. Good night, Minute Jun. As she closed the door behind her, Ada leaned against it and exhaled slowly. This was getting complicated. Jessica was right, attachment made things harder. But how do you not get attached to someone you're supposed to protect, someone who looks at you like you might be the key to their salvation? Her phone buzzed. Jessica, we need to talk. Garden. Midnight. Ada checked the time. 2 hours. She used them to explore her suite more carefully, finding the listening devices she'd suspected were there. 3 of them, professionally placed. She left them alone, disabling them would raise suspicion. Instead, she turned on music and took a long shower, washing away the tension of the evening. At midnight, she slipped out through a service entrance she'd mapped earlier. The garden was vast and maze-like, but Jessica had given her specific coordinates. Ada found her waiting by a statue of a dragon, cigarette in hand despite her otherwise pristine image. You smoke? Ada asked. Only when I'm stressed. Sit. Jessica gestured to a bench hidden from the main house by carefully cultivated hedges. We have a problem. What kind of problem? I ran backgrounds on everyone who had access to Minute Jun the night of the party. The poison should have been undetectable, but someone in the catering staff was running a side business. They kept detailed records of everything they served and to whom. If anyone looks close enough, they'll trace it back to me. Ada's blood went cold. How long do we have? Maybe a week before Sung Cho's people find it. He's been investigating the drowning incident. Claims he wants to make sure there wasn't foul play. Jessica laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? So what's the plan? Jessica took a long drag of her cigarette. We move up the timeline. Instead of 3 months, we have 3 weeks. I need you to get close to Minute Jun, I mean really close. Make him trust you completely. Get him to open up about the family business, about his father's operations. Anything we can use as evidence. You want me to betray him. I want you to save him. There's a difference. Is there? Ada stood, anger rising. You said he's trying to go legitimate. So why do we need evidence against him? Why not just help him leave? Because his father won't let him leave alive, and we can't protect him without taking down the whole organization. This is the only way, Ada. Trust me. Trust you. I barely know you. For all I know, you're playing me just like you're playing everyone else in this house. Jessica's face hardened. You want to know why I do this? My sister was trafficked through a Kang operation when she was 16. Promised a modeling contract in Seoul, ended up in a brothel in Gangnam. By the time we found her, she'd been there for 8 months. She killed herself a year later. So yes, I'm playing a role. Yes, I'm manipulating people. But I'm doing it to destroy the men who destroy lives. Don't you dare question my motives. Ada sat back down slowly. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just do your job. Get close to Minute Jun, make him trust you. And when the time comes, help me get him out of here alive. That's all I'm asking. And if I can't? If getting close to him compromises the mission? Jessica met her eyes. Then you'll have to choose between saving one man and stopping an organization that's ruined thousands of lives. I hope you're ready to make that choice if it comes to it. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of training sessions, family dinners, and late-night conversations with Minute Jun that felt increasingly dangerous. Ada found herself learning more about him than she'd intended: his love for old poetry, his secret hobby of painting landscapes he'd never visited, his dream of opening a legitimate art gallery where young Korean artists could showcase their work without corporate sponsorship. He was nothing like what she'd expected when Jessica first recruited her. He was kind, thoughtful, and deeply aware of the harm his family had caused. During their morning training sessions, he'd talk about the businesses he'd secretly started to help families transition away from Kang Enterprises, a construction company that only hired ex-gang members, a restaurant chain that employed women trying to escape trafficking situations, a scholarship fund for children from Itaewon's poorest neighborhoods. My father thinks I'm wasting money on charity projects, Minute Jun said one morning as they cooled down after sparring. He doesn't know I'm building an exit strategy. Every legitimate business I create is one less reason for me to stay in this life. How long have you been planning this? Ada asked, genuinely curious. Since my mother died. I was 16, and I remember standing at her funeral thinking that I had 2 choices: become exactly like my father and uncle, or find a way to honor her memory by being different. He smiled sadly. She used to say that the measure of a man isn't what he inherits, but what he builds with his own hands. So I've been building. Slowly. Carefully. For 16 years. And Jessica? Does she know about all this? Minute Jun's expression shifted, something guarded entering his eyes. Jessica is complicated. We've been together for 4 years, engaged for 1. She knows I want out, but I don't think she understands how serious I am. She's very invested in the image of being Mrs. Kang Minute Jun. The status, the power, the wealth. Sometimes I wonder if she'd still love me if I was just a regular person. Ada felt something twist in her chest. Jessica was playing him, had been playing him for years, and he had no idea. Or did he? There were moments when Minute Jun looked at Jessica with something that wasn't quite love, more like sadness or resignation. Maybe he knew more than he let on. What about you? Minute Jun asked, pulling Ada from her thoughts. You've been here 2 weeks and I still know almost nothing about your past. You mentioned your fiancé died. Was it recent? Ada tensed. This was the story she'd told Jessica to use for the background check, close enough to the truth to be believable, vague enough to hide the worst parts. 3 years ago. Business deal went wrong. He was in import-export. Got caught between rival groups and paid the price. I'm sorry. That must have been devastating. It was. For a long time, I blamed myself. I was a nurse before I became a lifeguard. I was there when he died, trying to stop the bleeding, and I couldn't. I failed him. Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. So I ran. Came to Korea, became a lifeguard. Changed careers to something where the stakes were lower, where I couldn't fail people the same way. Minute Jun reached out and took her hand gently. Ada, you didn't fail him. Sometimes we can't save people no matter how hard we try. That doesn't make us failures. It makes us human. She looked at their joined hands, at his face so open and earnest, and felt the walls she'd carefully constructed beginning to crack. This was dangerous. This was exactly what Jessica had warned her against. But God, it felt good to be seen by someone, to have someone understand the weight she'd been carrying alone for so long. Thank you, she whispered. They sat like that for a moment too long, hands clasped, something shifting between them that neither acknowledged out loud. Then Minute Jun's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He checked it and his expression darkened. I have to go. My father wants to see me. He stood but squeezed her hand once more before leaving. Same time tomorrow? Same time tomorrow. After he left, Ada sat alone in the dojo, trying to steady her breathing and her thoughts. She was in trouble. Deep trouble. Because somewhere between the sparring sessions and late-night conversations and shared vulnerabilities, she'd stopped seeing Minute Jun as an assignment and started seeing him as someone she genuinely cared about. Her phone buzzed. Jessica, progress report. How close are you? Ada stared at the message for a long time before typing. Close enough. His opening up about the business. Good. Push harder. We're running out of time. That night, Ada couldn't sleep. She kept replaying Jessica's words from the garden about having to choose between saving one man or stopping an organization. The utilitarian math was simple, one life versus thousands. But moral calculus never felt simple when you knew the name of the one person you'd be sacrificing. Around 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and went to the estate's library, a massive room filled with Korean and English books. She was browsing the poetry section when she heard footsteps. Minute Jun appeared in the doorway, also clearly unable to sleep. We have to stop meeting like this, he said with a tired smile. People will talk. Let them talk. What are they going to say? That the bodyguard and her client both suffer from insomnia? He laughed softly and joined her by the shelves. Can I show you something? It's private, and technically I'm not supposed to share it, but I trust you. Ada followed him through a hidden door behind a bookshelf. Of course there was a hidden door, into a small studio. The walls were covered with paintings, dozens of them, all depicting places Ada recognized from her research on Minute Jun's legitimate businesses. The restaurant in Hongdae. The construction site in Gangnam. The scholarship office in Itaewon. But in his paintings, they glowed with hope and possibility, transformed from simple buildings into symbols of something better. This is incredible, Ada breathed, genuinely moved. Minute Jun, these are beautiful. They're my escape. When everything feels too heavy, I come here and paint the world I want to build instead of the one I inherited. He picked up a brush, turning it over in his hands. My mother painted. She's the one who taught me. After she died, I stopped for years. But then I started the first legitimate business and I needed a way to process it all, to remind myself why I was doing this. You're not just trying to escape. You're trying to create something good. Is that naive? He looked at her with those tired, haunted eyes. My uncle thinks I'm wasting time and money. My father thinks I'm weak. Jessica thinks I'm idealistic to the point of delusion. Maybe they're all right. Ada stepped closer to him. Or maybe they're all wrong. Maybe trying to be better than what you were raised to be is the bravest thing you could possibly do. Minute Jun looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Do you really believe that? I do. He set down the brush and took a step toward her. They were close now, close enough that Ada could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his skin. The air between them felt charged with something dangerous and inevitable. Ada, I need to tell you something. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I know Jessica isn't who she claims to be. I've known for months. Ada's heart stopped. What? I hired a private investigator. Found out she's been working with someone in my family, planning something. I don't know all the details yet, but I know she's not really in love with me. Maybe she never was. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. The wedding is in 1 week, and I've been trying to figure out how to stop it without tipping off whoever she's working with. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only person in this house I trust completely. Because I think maybe you were sent to save my life in more ways than one. He took her hands in his. I have a plan to fake my death at the wedding. There's a chemist who developed a serum that can stop my heart for 90 seconds, long enough to convince everyone I'm dead. I'll wake up in the ambulance with my lawyer and documented evidence against my father and uncle. Jessica and whoever she's working with will be arrested on the spot. Ada's mind was racing. That's insane. Probably. But it's the only way I can think of to get out of this alive and take down the organization at the same time. His grip on her hands tightened. I need your help. You'll be the one to inject me with the serum during the wedding. Everyone will think you're trying to save me after I collapse. Can you do that? This was it. The moment Jessica had been pushing toward, but coming from a completely different angle. Minute Jun was planning his own escape, had been planning it long before Ada arrived. But his plan involved trusting her completely, putting his life literally in her hands. Minute Jun, there's something I need to tell you. The door burst open. Jessica stood there, and the expression on her face was cold fury barely contained beneath a mask of concern. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you, darling. We have wedding details to finalize. She looked at Ada and Minute Jun's joined hands, at how close they were standing, and something dangerous flashed in her eyes before she schooled her expression back to pleasant neutrality. Ada, you're dismissed for the night. Minute Jun and I need privacy. Ada looked at Minute Jun, silently asking if he was okay. He nodded slightly, releasing her hands. Good night, Ada. We'll talk more tomorrow. Good night. As Ada left, she heard Jessica's voice drop to a hiss. What were you thinking, telling her about the investigation? Do you want to get us both killed? The door closed before Ada could hear Minute Jun's response. She hurried back to her quarters, her mind spinning with implications. Jessica had overheard at least part of their conversation. She knew that Minute Jun knew. Which meant everything was about to accelerate in ways none of them had planned. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Jessica, emergency meeting. Garden. Now. This time when Ada arrived, Jessica wasn't alone. Kang Sung-ho stood beside her, and the warm, friendly uncle persona was completely gone. In its place was something cold and calculating that made Ada's instincts scream danger. Miss Okafor, Sung-ho said pleasantly, though his eyes were hard. Jessica tells me we have a problem. My nephew has been more forthcoming with you than is wise. That makes you a liability. Ada's hand moved instinctively toward the knife she kept strapped to her thigh, but 3 men stepped out from the shadows, Sung-ho's personal security team. She was outnumbered and outgunned. Don't be dramatic, Jessica said, though she wouldn't meet Ada's eyes. We're all on the same side here. Uncle Sung-ho has been helping me gather evidence against Daejung for months. He wants to take over the organization and clean it up, make it legitimate. But Minute Jun is a problem. He's too idealistic, too reckless. He'll expose everything before we're ready to move. Ada's stomach dropped as the pieces clicked into place. You're not NIS. You never were. I was. Past tense. I went rogue when I realized I could accomplish more working from inside. Jessica finally looked at her. The story about my sister was true. But the plan isn't to destroy the Kang family, it's to take it over and redirect it. Sung-ho will replace Daejung, I'll marry Minute Jun and inherit his portion of the empire, and together we'll transform it into something that does actual good. By killing Minute Jun? By making him irrelevant. The serum he told you about? It's real. But we're going to use it differently. You'll inject him at the wedding like he asked, but he won't wake up in an ambulance. He'll wake up in a secure facility where he'll stay until we've consolidated power. Then we'll release him with enough money to live comfortably somewhere far away. He gets his freedom, we get control of the organization. Everyone wins. Except he doesn't get a choice. Sung-ho stepped forward. My nephew is brilliant but naive. He thinks he can dismantle decades of infrastructure with charity projects and good intentions. What he doesn't understand is that the Kang Empire serves a purpose. It's a necessary evil that keeps chaos in check. Without us, rival organizations would tear Seoul apart fighting over territory. With us, with proper leadership, we can minimize harm while maintaining order. That's not for you to decide, Ada said, her voice hard. Minute-jun has the right to choose his own path. And he will. Just not the path he's currently on. Jessica pulled out a gun, not pointing it at Ada but making its presence known. You have a choice, Ada. Help us execute this plan and collect your 500 million won plus permanent residency. Or refuse and become a loose end that we can't afford to leave untied. Ada looked between them, calculating her options. 3 armed men, plus Jessica with a gun, plus Sung-ho who was probably armed as well. She could maybe take 2 of them before they got her, but not all 5. And even if she could, then what? Run to Minute-jun and tell him everything? Get them both killed? I need time to think, she said carefully. You have until morning, Sung-ho said. The wedding is in 6 days. We need to know if you're with us or against us. They let her go, which told Ada everything she needed to know. They were confident she couldn't stop them, confident that her options were limited enough that she'd make the rational choice. And maybe they were right. Maybe the smart play was to take the money, help them execute their plan, and let Minute-jun live out his life in comfortable exile. But Ada hadn't jumped into that pool to save Minute-jun because it was smart. She'd done it because it was right. And everything in her screamed that what Jessica and Sung-ho were planning was wrong, regardless of how they justified it. Back in her quarters, Ada paced like a caged animal, trying to think through impossible scenarios. She needed help, but who could she trust? Not the security team, they reported to Sung-ho. Not Dae-jung, he'd probably kill Minute-jun himself if he knew about the escape plan. Not Jessica, obviously. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Ada Okafor? The voice was male, professional, speaking English with a slight accent. This is Director Park, National Intelligence Service. We need to talk about Jessica Kim. Ada's blood ran cold. How did you get this number? We've been monitoring Jessica Kim for the past 3 months. She went dark on us 18 months ago, and we've been trying to locate her ever since. Your presence in the Kang estate flagged our surveillance systems. Director Park's voice was calm, measured. I'm going to be direct with you, Miss Okafor. Jessica Kim is a rogue agent who has been feeding us false intelligence for over a year. Whatever she's told you is likely a manipulation designed to serve her own agenda. We believe she's planning something catastrophic at the upcoming wedding, and we need your help to stop it. Why should I trust you? For all I know, you're part of whatever game is being played here. Because I'm going to tell you something only a handful of people know. Kim Jessica's real name is Kim Yeon-seo. Her sister wasn't trafficked by the Kang organization, she was recruited by it. She's currently alive and well, working as Sung Cho's chief financial officer under an assumed identity. The entire tragic backstory was fabricated to give Jessica's cover more emotional depth. Ada sat down heavily on her bed. You're saying her sister is alive? Alive and complicit. The Kim sisters have been running a long con to take over the Kang Empire from the inside. Yeon-seo handles the money, Jessica handles the air. Together, they've embezzled approximately 2 billion won over the past 4 years, hidden in offshore accounts. When they make their move at the wedding, they're planning to kill both Dae-jung and Minute-jun, frame it as a rival gang attack, and let Sung-ho take over with the sisters as his silent partners. Why would Sung-ho agree to that? Because they have evidence of every crime he's ever committed. Insurance policy. If he betrays them, they destroy him. It's actually quite elegant, from a tactical perspective. Ada's mind was reeling. And you're telling me this because we need someone on the inside who can get close to Minute-jun and warn him. Someone he trusts. Our intelligence suggests that's you, Miss Okafor. You've spent more time with him in the past 2 weeks than anyone outside his immediate family. He trusts you. What do you want me to do? Tell him everything. Show him this. Director Park sent a file to her phone, encrypted documents, surveillance photos, financial records. Everything he just told her, backed up with hard evidence. Help him survive the wedding, and we'll extract both of you safely. You have my word. The word of a spy. That's comforting. Park actually laughed. Fair enough. But consider this. What do you have to lose? If you do nothing, Minute Jun dies at his wedding and you become a loose end for Jessica and Sung-ho to eliminate. If you help us, there's at least a chance you both survive. The math seems simple to me. He hung up before Ada could respond. She stared at her phone, at the encrypted file Director Park had sent, and felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. She'd come to Korea to escape violence and had somehow walked straight into the center of it. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She grabbed her knife and approached cautiously. Who is it? It's me. Minute Jun's voice was barely audible through the door. Please, Ada. I need to talk to you. She opened the door. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, still wearing the same clothes from earlier. He pushed into the room and closed the door behind him, checking the hallway before he spoke. Jessica is planning to kill me at the wedding, he said without preamble. I overheard her talking to my uncle after you left. They're working together. They have been for years. I know. I just found out. Ada made a decision. She showed him her phone, the file from Director Park. Read this. All of it. Minute Jun took the phone with shaking hands and sank onto her couch, reading through the documents. She watched his face as he processed each new betrayal, Jessica's lies, his uncle's conspiracy, the depth of the deception that had surrounded him for years. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. 4 years, he whispered. I loved her for 4 years. She met my mother before she died. I introduced her to my friends, brought her into my life, shared my dreams with her. And it was all a lie. Ada sat beside him, close but not touching. I'm sorry. The worst part is I'm not even surprised. Some part of me always knew she didn't love me, not really. I just didn't want to believe it because then I'd have to admit that I've been completely alone this entire time, surrounded by people who only see me as a commodity or an obstacle. He laughed bitterly. Pathetic, right? It's not pathetic. It's human. We all want to believe we matter to someone. Minute Jun turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face. Do I matter to you, Ada? As more than just an assignment or a job? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Ada knew she should lie, should maintain professional distance, should protect herself from the inevitable pain of caring about someone in this impossible situation. But she'd spent 3 years building walls around her heart, and Minute Jun had somehow found a way through them without even trying. Yes, she said quietly. You matter to me. He closed his eyes, a single tear sliding down his cheek. I don't deserve your kindness. Stop it. Stop talking like you're worthless because of the family you were born into. You've spent 16 years trying to be better, to build something good. That matters. You matter. Minute Jun opened his eyes and looked at her with such raw vulnerability that Ada felt her heart break a little. Then he was leaning forward, and she was meeting him halfway, and they were kissing with the desperate intensity of two people who knew they might not survive the week. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Minute Jun rested his forehead against hers. I'm scared, he admitted. Not of dying. Of finally having something real and losing it before I even get to fully experience it. Then let's make sure we both survive. Ada pulled back just enough to look him in the eye. Director Park said he'd extract us both if we can make it through the wedding. We need a new plan. One that doesn't involve you injecting yourself with experimental serums or trusting people who want you dead. What did you have in mind? They spent the next 3 hours planning. Ada laid out everything she knew: Jessica's alliance with Sung-ho, the embezzled money, the planned assassination, the existence of Jessica's very much alive sister. Minute Jun contributed his knowledge of the estate's security systems, his father's routine, the wedding venue's layout. Together, they crafted a plan that was equal parts desperate and brilliant. The key was misdirection. Jessica and Sung-ho expected Minute Jun to go through with his fake death plan. So they'd let them think that's what was happening, right up until the moment it wasn't. There's one problem, Minute Jun said as dawn began to lighten the sky outside Ada's window. My father. If we take down Sung-ho and Jessica without dealing with him, we'll just be trading one monster for another. Director Park said they have evidence against your uncle. Surely they have evidence against your father too? They probably do. But my father has protected himself well. Any evidence would be circumstantial at best, not enough to guarantee a conviction. Minute Jun stood and walked to the window, watching the sunrise. There's another way. But you're not going to like it. Try me. I confront him. Tell him everything about Sung-ho and Jessica's plan. My father's many things, but he's not stupid. He'll see the betrayal for what it is, and he'll help us stop them. Then, once Sung-ho is dealt with, I'll give my testimony to the NIS about my father's crimes. He'll go to prison, but at least he'll be alive. You'd betray your own father. Minute Jun turned to face her. My father killed my mother, Ada. Not directly, but his choices, his lifestyle, his enemies, they're the reason she died. I've spent 16 years trying to honor her memory by being different from him. Maybe the final step is making sure he faces consequences for his actions. There was steel in his voice, a determination Ada hadn't heard before. This wasn't the sad, trapped man she'd met 2 weeks ago. This was someone who'd finally decided to stop running from his problems and face them head-on. Okay, she said. Let's do it. But we do it smart, and we do it together. No more secrets, no more solo heroics. Deal? Deal. He crossed the room and took her hands. Thank you, Ada. For everything. For saving my life that first time, and for saving it again now in ways that matter so much more. We're not safe yet. Save the gratitude for when we're both alive and far away from here. He smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. Where should we go? After all this is over. I've always wanted to see Jeju Island properly. Not the resort where I worked, but the real island. The beaches and villages and volcanic caves. Then that's where we'll go. I'll take you to every beautiful spot on the island, and we'll pretend to be normal people for a while. Maybe we'll even figure out how to actually be normal people. I'd like that. They spent 1 more hour refining their plan, then Minute Jun slipped back to his own quarters before the household staff began their morning routines. Ada tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind too wired with adrenaline and fear and something that felt dangerously close to hope. The next 5 days passed in a blur. Ada and Minute Jun trained together as usual, maintaining the appearance of normalcy while secretly preparing for the wedding confrontation. Ada met with Director Park twice, coordinating the NIS response and extraction plan. Minute Jun had a brutal conversation with his father that Ada wasn't present for, but afterwards Daejung looked at her with something approaching respect, and the security around Sung-ho suddenly intensified. Jessica noticed the shift but couldn't pinpoint its source. She cornered Ada twice, trying to confirm her cooperation, and both times Ada played her role perfectly, the mercenary bodyguard who'd chosen money over morality. It was easier than she'd expected to lie to Jessica now that she knew the full extent of her deception. The night before the wedding, Ada stood in her quarters staring at the dress she was supposed to wear, elegant and professional, chosen to blend into the background of the ceremony. Her phone buzzed with a text from Minute Jun. Can't sleep. Meet me in the garden. She found him by the koi pond where they'd first really talked. He looked impossibly handsome in the moonlight, and impossibly young. Just a man who wanted to be free, who'd spent his whole life trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Tomorrow could be the last day of my old life, he said as she joined him. I wanted to spend part of it with you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the koi move through the dark water. After a while, Minute Jun spoke again. If this goes wrong tomorrow, if something happens to me, I need you to know that these past 2 weeks have been the happiest I've been since my mother died. You gave me hope that maybe I could have a different life. Thank you for that. Nothing is going to go wrong. We've planned for every contingency. I know. But still. He took her hand. I'm glad the universe sent you to save me, Ada Okafor. You're exactly the kind of angel I needed. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, as if even nature was mocking the tragedy about to unfold. Ada dressed carefully, checking her concealed weapons 3 times. Director Park's extraction team was in position disguised as catering staff. Daejung's security had Sung-ho surrounded without him realizing it. Everything was set. The ceremony was being held at the Schiller Hotel's Grand Ballroom, 500 guests in attendance. Ada took her position near the altar, close enough to intervene if needed but far enough not to disrupt the ceremony. She watched Jessica walk down the aisle in her Vera Wang gown, the picture of bridal perfection, and marveled at how good her acting was. If Ada didn't know the truth, she'd believe Jessica was actually happy. Minute Jun stood at the altar looking calm and composed, but Ada could see the tension in his shoulders. Their eyes met across the room, and he gave her the slightest nod. It was time. The ceremony progressed through its early stages. Vows were about to be exchanged when Minute Jun suddenly raised his hand. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this." The crowd gasped. Jessica's perfect mask slipped for just a second, revealing fury beneath. "Minute Jun, what are you?" "I know everything, Jessica. About you and my uncle, about the embezzled money, about the plan to kill me and my father today. It's over." Chaos erupted. Sung Cho's security team moved toward Minute Jun, but Daejung's men were faster. Director Park and his NIS agents revealed themselves, weapons drawn. Jessica tried to run, but Ada was already moving, catching her before she made it 3 steps. Gunshots rang out. Someone screamed. Ada felt a burning pain in her shoulder but ignored it, keeping Jessica pinned until NIS agents could take over. She looked around frantically for Minute Jun and found him on the ground, Daejung standing over him protectively, his own weapon drawn. For one terrible moment, Ada thought they'd failed. Then Minute Jun sat up, winded but alive, and looked at her with relief and something that looked like love. The next hour was a blur of arrests and statements and paramedics. Ada's shoulder wound was superficial, grazed by a bullet from one of Sung Cho's men. Jessica and Sung Ho were both taken into custody, along with a dozen other conspirators. Daejung was also arrested, though Minute Jun had negotiated terms that would keep him in a minimum security facility rather than a maximum security prison. Finally, as the sun set over Seoul, Ada and Minute Jun sat in the back of an NIS vehicle being driven to a safe house. They were both exhausted, both wounded in various ways, both alive. "We did it," Minute Jun said wonderingly. "We actually survived." "Barely. Still counts." He took her hand carefully, mindful of her injured shoulder. "So, Jeju Island?" "Not yet. You have testimony to give, and I have about 1,000 forms to fill out for permanent residency. But after that..." She smiled. "Yes. Jeju Island. Just 2 normal people trying to figure out what normal looks like. I like the sound of that." 3 months later, Ada stood on a beach in Jeju, teaching swimming lessons to a group of children from Seoul. Minute Jun was opening his art gallery next week, featuring young Korean artists who'd never had a chance to showcase their work. They were living in a small house with a view of the ocean, and for the first time in years, neither of them was running from anything. Minute Jun appeared behind her as the children's lesson ended, wrapping his arms around her waist. "How was class?" "Good. That one girl, Ji-woo, she's going to be competitive swimmer one day. Mark my words. I believe you. You have a gift for seeing potential in people." Ada leaned back against him, feeling safe and content in a way she'd never expected to feel again. "So do you. You saw potential in yourself when everyone else just saw a criminal legacy. We saved each other, Ada. That's what matters." As the sun set over the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ada thought about the day she jumped into that infinity pool to save a drowning stranger. She'd thought she was saving a life. She hadn't realized she was saving her own. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now after months of saying them. "I love you too," Minute Jun replied. "Thank you for jumping in. For saving me in every way that matters." They stood together on the beach, 2 people who'd been drowning in different ways, who'd found each other and decided to swim toward shore together. It wasn't the ending Ada had imagined when she first came to Korea. It was better. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more Afro-Korean content like this, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment below about what you'd like to see next. Your support means everything and helps us create more of these powerful stories. Part 2 is already in the works, because Jessica's story isn't quite finished. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Until then, remember, sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back.